Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Gretchen and today I am here with my predictions for the 2024 Booker Prize long list. And I am so excited to finally be doing this video. I have been torturing myself over the last few weeks trying to narrow my list down. I started really seriously thinking about what was going to make my list about a month ago, and I have gone back and forth so many times, and I finally said to myself on Sunday, the madness has to stop. Just come up with your list. You're not going to get any of them right anyway, so just throw it out to the universe and see what happens. And I think that that's kind of the best way to do it, not spend so much time thinking about it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many of us booktubers are throwing our predictions out there. None of us are going to get more than a handful of them, if even that. Last year, I cannot even tell you how much time I spent, and I think I only ended up with one of my predictions actually making the long list. So we do this because it's a labor of love. We love researching, we love finding out about these books, and it's just so much fun to do. I love putting this video together. I love watching all of the other booktuber videos out there to see what they're thinking and the logic that they have behind their choices, and it's just really fun. And even though, like I said, most of us don't get nearly as many right as we would like to, it still doesn't deter us from doing it. And I just think it's a lot of fun, and it is literally my favorite book prize of the year because of that. So the Booker Prize, they're going to be announcing the long list on July 30th. So we only have a couple weeks to go, and we are spoiled for choice this year for amazing books. There are so many books that I have already read that I think would be great fits for the long list, and there are many that have been on my TBR for a while that I'm dying to have an excuse to get to, and then there's ones that I, just in the process of trying to figure out what my predictions are, have recently come on my radar that I'm also excited about. So I am so looking forward to having that list and having 12 to 13, more than likely 13 new books to kind of dig into. And of course, I'll be reading the entirety of the long list, and we'll be posting individual reviews for each of them. And I'm not going to say a whole lot about these books just because I know that there are a lot of other booktubers out there that have put their own prediction videos out, and there's a lot of talk about a good bit of these books. There's a lot of crossover. I actually took the time after I finalized my list on Sunday. I allowed myself to start watching the other videos because I don't like to watch the other prediction videos because I worry that I'm going to get influenced and I am going to start making adjustments to my list, and it's already hard enough for me to come up with my own list without worrying about that. So I started watching the videos yesterday, and all of the ones that I could find for those that have done their videos already, I did do a little spreadsheet just to see what their predictions were, and I kind of like color coded and highlighted everything so that I could see where the overlap was, what the heavy hitters were, and also see the thought processes of everybody as to why they think those certain books would make it. And I will say that watching the videos this year was especially fun because the booktubers are getting more and more creative about how they are coming up with their lists, and I just love the inventiveness that goes into this, and it just shows me how passionate people are about this prize and how much we truly do appreciate this prize and the books that it gets us to read and talk about with you guys. So, and I think I have a pretty good mix of different authors represented here. So I'll go ahead and get into my list. I do have 13. It could be 12 to 13, but it has consistently been 13 for the past few years. So I had a hard time narrowing it down to just 13. I could not imagine only having 12 slots to fill. So if you have 13, why not use them all? So I am gonna actually start with my obvious choice. If any of you have watched any of the other booktubers do their videos, it will be no surprise that James is on my long list prediction. This is one of my favorite reads of all time. I think that this is going to be a modern masterpiece. I loved this book so much, and it is consistently getting high marks and high praise from so many readers and critics, and I would be very surprised if this book did not make it on to the long list, especially because Percival Everett was also shortlisted a few years ago for the Tree, so he has a track record with the prize, and everybody is talking about this book, and it feels like a Booker book to me. So fingers crossed that it ends up making the list. My second prediction is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle, and this book follows the lives of participants in a women's youth boxing tournament. I read this one earlier this year and I thought it was great. It had a unique premise, it was quick paced, it was feminist, it had really sharp writing and an interesting structure behind it, and all of which I think are elements that we can usually find in some of the long listed books, so I'm hoping to see that make the list as well. My third prediction is Private Rights by Julia Armfield, and this is a speculative reimagining of King Lear with queer elements. So that sounds amazing. I read Our Wives Under the Sea for the first time just a few weeks ago, and I was blown away by Julia Armfield's writing. I thought that it was fantastic, and if this writing or her writing style and the way that that book was written is anything close to how Private Rights is, I am definitely seeing it being also appealing to the judges too, because it was such a phenomenal book, and I'm really looking forward to that. Now, Private Rights is going to be a little tough. It's going to be one of those ones that if it does make the long list, it's being, I think actually it's already been released in the UK, I believe, or close to being released. I don't think it will be released in the States for a while. So as an American following the prize, that is something that we often struggle with, is getting our hands on these books. But for any of you that are not aware, Blackwell's, they ship for free to the States. So if you are in want or need of any of these books that eventually end up on the long list that aren't available here yet in the States, that's a great way for you to get your hands on those books. The only thing is that even though shipping is free, it does take a little longer. I think the most that I've ever waited for a book coming from Blackwell's was maybe 10 days. So if you can be patient, you usually can get the books in a timely manner. Now, my fourth pick is going to be Cinema Love by J. Ming Tang. This is a book that spans over several years from China to New York, where we follow a married Chinese couple And in this relationship, the wife and the husband meet earlier in China, where she is working, I think they're both actually working at a cinema, and she realizes that her husband is gay and he is having relations with men while working at that cinema, and they end up getting married, and she keeps her husband's secrets. So this sounds like a book that will be beautiful and heartbreaking, and we always have at least one book on the long list that celebrates the immigrant experience. So we have them moving from China to the States, and also the fact that it has a queer love story component to it makes me think that it would be a really good, meaningful read, and I feel like that's always something that we see on the Booker long list as well. The next book is one that I have seen on a few other BookTubers predictions, and that is The Night Alphabet by Joelle Taylor. And this book is set in the future, and it has a woman that enters a tattoo parlor. She has all of these tattoos on her body, and she goes to get one final tattoo, which is basically just a single line connecting all of her current tattoos together. And during the process, she tells the story of each of the tattoos, about when they happen and how they came to be. And I have heard that this book plays with time as well. So we're going into the past, we're going into the future, and I have not heard a single negative thing about this book. I'm looking forward to this read regardless. So if it doesn't make the long list, I'm still gonna read it, but I'm hoping that it makes it so that I have an excuse to read it sooner than later. My next prediction is called Evenings and Weekends by Oisin McKenna, and this book says that it is a debut novel that follows a multi-generational cast of characters through a London heatwave as their simmering tensions and secrets come to a head over a feverish, life-changing weekend. Now, a couple reasons why I included this. First of all, I love seeing debut authors on the long list. We always typically have a few of those, and also this is an Irish author, and I don't think we will ever see a Booker long list that does not have at least one Irish author. They're always churning out excellent books, so I think that this one has a pretty good chance of making the long list. My seventh pick is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Now, this is a quiet little novel. It follows 6 astronauts, and they are on a space station witnessing a series of orbits around Earth. And I read this book earlier this year, and I really enjoy it. And I think it has a lot of elements in it that we often see within Booker nominees. It's beautifully written, and it forces the reader to think about the world that we live in and our place in it in the grand scheme of things. And I would love to see more people reading it. And I definitely think that it's kind of that little unassuming, it's not really plot heavy, and it's one of those books that's very quiet and unassuming, but it has a lot to say, and it really kind of gets all of those thoughts churning in your head, and I can definitely see that appealing to the Booker judges. My 8th pick is another one that I have seen on a lot of predictions list, and that is The Road to the Country by Chigozie Obioma. And this is on most of our lists for a reason. The author has a track record of being longlisted for the Booker Prize. He only has 2 other novels, and both of those made the long list at least in the past. So track record alone, I think, is a pretty good indication that we might see this one on our list. This book is set during the Nigerian Civil War, and it follows a university student trying to save his brother. It sounds like a pretty emotional read, and we usually have at least one book that is following some type of war or conflict. So I like the chances of making this one for that reason as well. Moving on to number 9, I am going for Whale Fall by Elizabeth O'Connor. This book reminded me, I read this just a few weeks ago, and it reminded me so much of The Colony by Audrey McGee, which was longlisted back in 2022. The booker cannot resist also longlisting books set on remote islands or in isolated places. So pair that with hauntingly beautiful writing and a heartbreaking plot, and I can very much see a book like this making the cut. Now, I did kind of go back and forth with this. I was also thinking about Clear by Kara Davies, and I almost didn't include either of them. I ended up going with Whale Fall instead because it's the one that I have read and I really enjoyed it. And I did struggle a little thinking that maybe we were too close to The Colony for this one to make the cut, but I just enjoyed this book so much that I wanted to talk about it a little more and hopefully get more people to read it. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Coming in at number 10, we have The Coast Road by Alan Mirren. This book takes place in 1994, or it starts in 1994. And we have a woman that leaves her Irish hometown. She leaves her husband and her, I think she has 2 sons behind, to go to Dublin to have an affair with a married man. I don't think things work out with that, and she decides that she's going to return home and try to get her old life back, but things just don't go as planned, and they're not as easy as that. And this is one of those books that I selfishly put on my predictions list because I want it to make the long list so bad because I want to read it sooner than later, but it also just sounds like a very Booker type book to me. And then also another Irish author. We definitely like to see those on the long list, and I would not be surprised because this book is getting a lot of buzz at the moment as well. Coming in at number 11, we have another heavy hitter. I've seen a lot of talk about this one, and it sounds like for good reason, and that is Praiseworthy by Alexis Wright. I'll start by saying the Aussies need to start getting some love with the Booker Prize. There was a time when there were Aussie books left and right on the long list, and it feels like over the past few years, I can't even think off the top of my head if there has been an Aussie author longlisted, but it's time, and I think that this is a great option for that to finally happen again. Alexis Wright is an Indigenous author to boot, so I think that that also gives her an edge on making the list, especially because this book revolves around an Indigenous story. And a book like this can really help educate and get this information into mainstream conversations. And I really do know that the Booker Prize does like to do things like that. They like to champion things like that and getting those often neglected stories or those lesser known stories out into the open. And the other part of me that really wants to read this book is it has a lot of donkeys in it, and who doesn't want to read a book that focuses on donkeys? Like I was sold before, and then when I heard that, it immediately put me over the edge. The 12th book that is making my list is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, and this is on my list because a new book by Elif Shafak just seems like a given to me. She has a great track record with the Booker Prize, consistently puts out high quality books, and I'm hoping that that'll be the case with this one too. This could also be that one book that isn't released until after the announcement, we usually have, and when I say that, I'm not talking about in the States. There are often a lot of the books that aren't available in the States yet, but there's usually at least one book that makes the long list that isn't even available in the UK yet, and I'm wondering if this is going to be that book. However, if it is, the good news is that we shouldn't have to wait too long, because that book is going to be released, I think, on August 8th, which is a little over a week after the long list would be announced. So if we do have to wait for a book to be released, hopefully it's that one and we don't have to wait very long at all. And coming in at number 13, my very last pick is Behind You is the Sea by Susan Murati Daraj. And this is a book that follows the lives of Palestinian American families as they try to build their new world lives in Baltimore, while also trying to kind of stay true to their roots. So the book says, Behind You is the Sea faces stereotypes about Palestinian culture head on, shifting perspectives to weave a complex social fabric replete with weddings, funerals, broken hearts, and devastating secrets. So I chose this book for a couple of reasons. So first and foremost, with all of the horrible things that have been going on in the world and all of the dehumanizing toward Palestinians that has been going on, I think that this could be a really important read and an important book that we would want to spotlight, especially because it tackles the debunking of some of the myths about the Palestinian people and a lot of the stereotypes that we attach to them. And the second thing that made me think of this book making the long list is that although it is labeled as a novel, when I started to do some digging into it, I found that many people were saying it's less of a novel and more of a collection of very closely intertwined short stories. And as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought of last year's longlisted and eventually shortlisted title, If I Survive You by Jonathan Escoffery. So we do know that a book has to be a novel, or if it is a short story collection, they need to be closely intertwined. Now, I do know that this is labeled as a novel, but that just kind of made me think of it, and the fact that we had a similar type of book make the long list last year, that maybe this book could slide into the long list for this year. So there you have it. Those are my 13 long list predictions, and I am throwing this out to the universe right now. My goal is 2. If I can get just 2 predictions right, I will be so happy. Last year, I think I only got 1. I think I have a pretty safe bet with James. There's only one booktuber, I think, that didn't put James on their long list, and that was Roro, but that's because he used a randomizer and it just didn't land on it. I'm sure if he really sat down to think about what books deserve to be on the list and he didn't do that approach, I'm pretty sure James would be on his list, because I know he loved that book just as much as I did. So I feel pretty comfortable with James being on the list, but we could be wrong. I think a good bit of us had Demon Copperhead on our predictions last year, and it didn't make it, so who knows? And I guess that's the fun of all of this. We have no idea, but if I can get 2, I will be a happy girl. So we have that long list being announced on July 30th. I'm not sure of the exact time, but I will definitely be doing a reaction video, and also, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be doing an individual review for each of the long listed titles. And until we read again, bye.